We have done much exploration of Kerbin. We have conquered the Moon and Minmus too. The Kerbal home in the universe is well understood. It's time to look further, to the planets. Sol 1 was launched some time ago, headed for Juno. It has only a simple communication device and is well out of signal range by now. Nonetheless, the spacecraft flew by Duna and Ike at a considerable distance. We can see that there are great icy poles on the planet, and that both objects are tidally locked to one another. Elsewhere, Sol 2 reached Perihelion. This is its closest approach to the Sun, which is overwhelmingly bright at this range. However, Sol 2 did not get close enough to get science from the low solar environment. And now, a third, Sol 3. This one destined to fly by Dres. Dres is a minor planet, very far out and at a wonky angle. It's quite a difficult place to reach, and the payoff is but we can do it, so I shall. A more interesting launch window arrived after that. To Eve. This is the Eve Explorer, an orbiter and lander. Very much in the style of the Venera 9 and 10 missions. Getting to Eve was simple enough, but I realized early on that I wasn't going to have the fuel to complete this contract, and my orbiter didn't have a relay antenna, so the lander would not be able to communicate. So I also launched EHATSA, which I'm sure stood for something clever and witty, but I forgot to write it down. That spacecraft will arrive at Eve shortly after the Explorer. By now, Sol 2 had reached its aphelion, the highest point in an orbit over the Sun, and was very close to Kerbin. From here, the spacecraft could transmit its collected solar science. Sol 1 also reached its perihelion soon after. It was, unfortunately, pretty much as far away from Kerbin as it could possibly be, so we shall not be getting science from Duna just yet. Keeping on theme, Sol 3 arrived at Dres after a long journey through inky darkness. It also had no signal, which is annoying, but the experiments could be gathered. And I got to see what 3 kilometers per second actually looks like. Shit. Oh my god. It's a speed which just doesn't make sense to an earthbound monkey mind, and is, in reality, only half the speed needed to orbit our planet. Anyway, we will get that science eventually, and can tick Dres off the list of worlds to visit, probably never to visit again. But there is a transfer window to a far more interesting planet coming up. Jool, the only gas giant in this system, which is accompanied by a host of moons. This is Phosphorus 1, an advanced probe which will fly by the enormous planet. After completing a maneuver in deep space, it hasn't got much fuel remaining, so a flyby is probably all I'll get. Unless I can manage these secondary flybys just right. Here you can see I will get an encounter with both Lathe and Tylo. It is possible to use Tylo for a gravity assist, which captures into Julian orbit. A while later, the Eve Explorer arrived at its destination and inserted into a polar orbit. Eve is shrouded in purple clouds and, if you look closely, speckled with lightning bolts. Due to the limited communication range, I was not able to separate the lander just yet, but from this orbit we can start building up a map of the planet, at least its northern hemisphere. It was a long wait for Ihatsa to arrive, but the satellite managed to insert into a high orbit to complete this contract, and could provide a communications relay back to Kerbin. Far from the planet, the Eve Explorer split into two, a lander and orbiter section. The lander could orient itself well enough. It was equipped with a substantial heat shield and parachute. As the lander made contact with the upper atmosphere of Eve, it became clear that something was not quite right. As the atmosphere began to bite, the probe's internal temperature rose rapidly, and something integral to the structure melted away. It broke up violently in the upper atmosphere of Eve. A small segment did survive and fell to the planet a few orbits later. However, it had no power, communications, or parachute. But I counted. It crashed into the planet. It crashed into the surface, but there's this one tiny little piece, this little tiny gyroscope that survived, and that's counted to give me the world's first milestone of landing on this planet. Meanwhile, the orbiter was able to get an encounter with Gilly, the tiny potato moon of Eve. Even at this ridiculously close range, I was not able to get low science. Maybe on a future orbit. With that complete, and once Phosphorus completes its mission, there will be only two planets left to visit, Moho and Iru.